Go ahead and get started. I see folks are still logging in, but we have quite a bit to cover and want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions at the end. So, aloha mai kako. Welcome everybody to this informational webinar on the Pili na Moku community funding opportunity. Mahalo for being here and for your interest in this funding opportunity. This meeting is being recorded, as you should have seen when you logged in. The recording will be posted on the Pili na Moku project website at pilinamoku.org. Because of the size of this meeting, we're really excited about all the interest. We will keep everyone muted throughout the duration of the meeting. Please put any questions in the Q&A function or chat. You can find the Q&A function on the More button on the bottom right-hand side of your Zoom control panel. We will also accept questions through the meeting chat function, also available on your bottom control bar. And we will address questions following the presentation. Again, welcome everybody. I'm Brad Romine with the University of Hawaiʻi Sea Grant College Program and the Pili na Moku Project. Joining you today from University of Hawaii at Manoa on Oahu. I'm joined by my colleagues in the Pili na Moku Project, including Katie Hinson, Maya Walton, Oli Carby, Hi'i Sanchez, and our amazing 5 Moku coordinators who we will introduce in a slide later in the presentation. Our Hawaiʻi Sea Grant Program Director and lead on the Pili na Moku project is Dr. Darren Lerner. The funds for this Pili na Moku community funding opportunity are being made available through an award from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, through their Office for Coastal Management. The funding opportunity is being administered by Hawaiʻi Sea Grant through this Pili na Moku project. Katie and I will provide an overview of the funding opportunity, which will take maybe about 25 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions through the Q&A and chat functions in your Zoom window. So feel free to leave questions in that Q&A function, Q&A window, or the chat along the way. So a brief overview of what we'll cover in this presentation. We'll talk about the intentions and background for this funding opportunity, the requirements for funding, talk about the proposal process, share key dates for the proposal and statement of interest process. We are providing a list of frequently asked questions, or FAQs, that we will add to from questions that we receive in this meeting. And then with remaining time, we will open it up to questions received through the chat or the Q&A function. This is an overview of the broader Pili na Moku project, which is focused on supporting large-scale Aina restoration efforts and governance practices that balance place-based knowledge and stewardship with centralized decision-making. Project activities center in 5 moku, or hui moku, in Kona, that is South and West Kauai, Waianae, Oahu, Molokai, Central Maui, and Kohala, Hawaii. We describe these 5 regions highlighted in this map on the right in red as moku or hui moku, just recognizing that names and the number of moku in these areas can vary some depending on source. The goals of this funding opportunity are to provide moku-level support to community-based organizations in caring for Aina so communities can thrive across generations. In all, we're providing $7 million in funding through this initiative to support Aina-based conservation and restoration, network building, knowledge exchange, capacity building, and community-centered governance. This funding opportunity seeks projects that align with 3 primary objectives. 1, to build on established relationships of trust in the moku. 2, invest in long-term community capacity. And 3, embrace multi-generational knowledge. This funding opportunity has 2 funding pathways that you may apply for. The first is the collaborative project funding pathway. This pathway is making available up to $1.2 million for 1 collaborative award in each of the 5 project moku or hui moku. These project awards will be for 2 years. This project funding pathway is seeking proposals that bring together multiple nonprofit organizations and their activities at the Moku scale. This begins with a single statement of interest describing the roles and activities of multiple collaborating organizations. Statements of interest and proposals should address multiple Pili na Moku focus areas, which we will go over in some of the slides coming up. Through this proposal pathway, we want you to demonstrate how you are maximizing collective benefit to the Moku through collaboration. Organizations will receive funding through a community funding hub in their Moku as the fiscal sponsor if awarded through this funding pathway. We'll have a little more on the community funding hubs coming up later in the presentation. The second project funding pathway is the individual project funding pathway. This project funding pathway is making up to $200,000 available in total for 1 or 2 individual awards in each of the 5 project Moku or Hui Moku. So that's $200,000 in each of the 5 Moku or Hui Moku. Project awards in this funding pathway are also for 2 years. This funding pathway is open to nonprofit organizations working in the Moku. Statements of interest and proposals in this pathway should describe 1 project for proposal. This pathway is being made available for organizations that feel they may be better suited for individual rather than the collaborative funding. Applications through this pathway should describe how the project would address 1 or more of the Pili na Moku focus areas. Awardees may opt to be funded directly through a cost reimbursable subaward agreement from the University of Hawaii or through the community funding hub within their Moku. All projects should address 1 or more of the following 6 Pili na Moku focus areas. Proposals to the collaborative projects pathway should address multiple focus areas. Proposals to the individual projects pathway should address at least 1 of the following 6 focus areas. Those focus areas are 1, conserve and restore forests and watersheds. These are projects that support healthy native forests and plentiful vai. 2, enhancing coastal stewardship. These are projects that support healthy coastlines and beaches. 3, restore marine abundance. These are projects that revitalize ocean-based food systems. 4, sharing knowledge and strengthening networks across communities. These are projects that support community-based networks for collective visioning and action. 5, reducing risk and improving disaster preparedness. These are projects that support disaster preparedness and recovery. And 6, advanced community governance. These are projects that support community-driven Aina stewardship. Okay, some information on eligibility requirements. For both the individual and collaborative funding pathways, applicants must be nonprofit organizations with strong place-based relationships and a history of supporting Aina restoration and thriving communities. And again, project activities must be focused within 1 of the 5 Moku or Hui Moku. Those again are Kona, South or West Kauai, Waianae Oahu, Molokai, Central Maui, and Kohala on Hawaii Island. Statements of interest are due August 28th this year, 2026, by 5 o'clock local time here in Hawaii via the Google Forms link that is available through the funding opportunity and on the funding opportunity website. Importantly, all applicants must submit a statement of interest in order to submit a full proposal. So I'll say it again, you must submit a statement of interest to be eligible to submit a full proposal. The review process for statements of interest submitted to the 2 project funding pathways are as follows. Statements of interest to the collaborative project pathway are reviewed based on the eligibility requirements described in the previous slide and 6 evaluation criteria, which will be described coming up in a few slides. Based on the statements of interest, 1 collaborative project from each Moku or Hui Moku will be invited to develop a full proposal for funding. Statements of interest to the individual projects pathway are reviewed based only on the eligibility requirements described in the earlier slide. All statements of interest to the individual projects funding pathway that meet the basic eligibility requirements of this opportunity will be encouraged to continue to the full proposal phase. So I will pass it over to Katie, and she will run us through the second half of the slide set. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, so should you be encouraged to submit a full proposal for this opportunity, those will be due by November 6th, also of this year, and also 5 p.m. local Hawaii time. We're asking that full proposals be submitted via Sea Grant, which is our online application platform. And there are links to Sea Grant on our website, as well as in the request for proposal document. And we will also be making available a short video tutorial on how to use Sea Grant. But it's pretty simple. You just sort of upload your materials via that platform. To apply for the full proposal, you're going to need to submit a proposal narrative for collaborative projects that is a 15-page or less narrative. And for individual projects, that's a 7-page or less narrative. We also ask that you submit a data management plan, which simply describes any data being collected by the project and how that data will be stored, utilized, and shared. We asked for a list of current and pending funding sources, which explains all the funding sources your organization or collaborating organizations currently receive support from, and any outstanding applications for funding that you may have. And then finally, we asked for a budget and a budget narrative. Much more detailed descriptions of all of these proposal components, as well as templates for some of these proposal components and examples, can be found on our website or by looking in the appendices of the request for proposals document. You can go to the next slide, please. So the review process for the full proposal looks like this. For collaborative projects, if you remember, only one collaborative project has been invited to the full proposal stage. So that collaborative project will be reviewed by an expert panel using the 6 evaluation criteria that I'll discuss in a moment, and will be provided with feedback on how proposal activities may be strengthened. Following review, the Pili and Moku team will work with that collaborative project team in an iterative process to implement those recommendations and kind of refine their proposed activities. For individual projects, the full proposals will be reviewed by an expert panel using the 6 evaluation criteria, and then results from that panel review, as well as the availability of funding, will determine which and how many of those individual projects are recommended to receive funding. You can go to the next slide, please. So this is the evaluation criteria you've been hearing so much about. They total to 100% overall, but some criteria are assigned a bit weightier percentage than others, so that's good to look at. So the first criteria, which is worth 20%, is connection to Moku and place-based alignment. And that is looking at, are there established relationships and experience working from the collaborative team or the individual organization in one of the 5 Moku or Hui Moku where the proposed work will happen. We have proposed project plan and goals, also 20%. And that's asking things like, are there goals and objectives that are achievable in 2 years as part of this project? Does the project address unmet needs and implement activities identified as priorities in community discussions? Is there a project plan with methods, practices, and activities used to achieve the proposed goals and objectives? And then you'll see throughout the criteria, we have a couple of things that are just for the collaborative projects. The collaborative projects are larger, they involve more funding, they're a bit more complicated. You have a bit more space to develop your narrative, so they have a little bit more complex evaluation criteria. So just for collaborative project pathways, the panel will also look at understanding the roles, responsibilities, and activities of each organization in the collaborative proposal. Next slide, please. Then we have relevance to Pili na Moku focus areas. These are the 6 areas that Brad talked about earlier. And that's another 20%. And we're looking at to what degree will the project address one or more of the 6 focus areas. And then as mentioned before, for the collaborative project pathway, we have an extra criteria here. Does the proposed work support a collective of integrated projects across a broad area of the Moku? Long-term community capacity and impact is 20%. And that looks at how does this work invest in community capacity and agency for the long term. And then for the collaborative project pathway, we also want to understand to what degree does the project support grassroots organizations in the Moku. And we have a particular definition of grassroots organizations that you can find in our FAQ, and we can also discuss further. Folks are interested in how we are defining that in the context of this opportunity. And the last 2 evaluation criteria are worth 10%. The first is advancing multi-generational knowledge. Does the project strengthen the passing of Ike across generations, uplift Ike Kapuna, while also empowering Opio and Makua to lead, practice, and innovate? And then qualifications of the project team. Simply, is the project team well qualified to implement the proposed activities? Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm a bit of a visual learner. This is a fairly nuanced process. So this is my attempt to summarize everything we just described about the whole application and review process in one diagram, which will either prove really enlightening for everyone or really confusing. So if you get super confused by what I'm about to walk through, please ask us more questions and we can work on it. Okay, so this is showing the application and review process just for one Moku's worth of applicants, because these awards are happening at the Moku scale. On the far left panel, you can see the statement of interest, or we've abbreviated as SOI phase. And the collaborative statements of interest are represented in blue, and the individual statements of interest are represented in red. And then each of the letters represents one organization. So we have 2 collaborative statements of interest being submitted, one which is made up of organizations A, B, C, and D, and one made up of organizations F, E, and G. And each collaborative group will just submit one statement of interest representing all the organizations involved in that GUI. The individual statements of interest in red are being submitted by organizations H, I, and J. And for those individual statements of interest, every organization is submitting one statement of interest because they're individual proposals. Okay, so all those statements of interest get submitted. The middle panel shows kind of what happens after the statement of interest phase, an invitation to the full proposal. So as we mentioned before, the collaborative statements of interest, the blue ones, are reviewed based on those 6 evaluation criteria, and one collaborative team is invited to submit a full proposal. So here we have collaborative team A, B, C, and D are being invited to move to the full proposal stage. Collaborative team E, F, and G were not invited to submit a full collaborative proposal, but if they want to, they can adapt their proposed activities, and they are eligible to submit as individual proposals if they want to. So that's what you see happening here. The project activities from F, E, and G have kind of been converted into individual proposals. The individual statements of interest are reviewed just based on eligibility. So any individual statement of interest that meets the eligibility criteria that we talked about will be able to submit a full proposal. So that's why you see that, H, I, and J are all kind of invited to a full proposal. And then the far right panel represents after the full proposals have been reviewed, and these are the organizations that are ultimately being recommended to receive funding. So collaborative proposal A, B, C, and D is reviewed by an expert panel. And at this stage, they're just being provided with recommendations for improving their activities. And then ultimately they will receive funding. And then on the individual project pathway, all of these red organization proposals in the middle panel, H, E, G, I, J, F, are reviewed by the expert panel. And 2 of them, I and E, are recommended for funding, just because there's not unlimited funds available. So that is my attempt to sum up the whole process we just described, and hopefully someone found it enlightening and not just confusing. You say we can go to the next slide now. Awesome. Okay. So community funding hubs are another piece of this puzzle that we haven't talked about much. We have been working with a number of organizations in all of the Moku and Hui Moku to stand up community funding hubs. The idea being that these are organizations that are available to help with managing grants, distributing funds, and taking on some of the administrative burden of receiving funding, particularly for smaller, more resource-limited organizations. So this is an important thing to note. All of the awards for the collaborative project pathway will ultimately be managed through one of these hubs as a fiscal sponsor. So that blue Hui proposal, once awarded, it will move through the community funding hub as a fiscal sponsor. The red individual projects have the option of either being directly funded from the University of Hawaii as a subaward agreement with that individual organization, or if interested, that organization can request to also receive funding through the community funding hub as a fiscal sponsor and benefit from this additional capacity and support in managing funds. And next slide, please. So these are the community funding hubs. It's important to note that the community funding hubs are not involved in deciding who receives funding. So if you have broader questions about this funding opportunity, you really should direct them to us at Hawaiʻi Sea Grant and Pili Moku, and not to the community funding hubs. So the community funding hub for Kona Kauai is the Kauai Economic Development Board. Next, please. For Waianae, it's the El Payo Social Services. Next, please. For Central Maui, it will be, oh, sorry, I skipped one. For Molokai, it will be Molokai Heritage Trust. Next. For Central Maui, it will be Living Pono Project. Next. And then for Kohala on Hawaii Island, it will be Vibrant Hawaii. Next, please. Okay, and then these are our Moku coordinators, which Brad mentioned these folks before. These are individuals that are working within each of the Moku on the ground. They are Hawaiʻi Sea Grant extension faculty and part of the Pili Moku project. Maybe you recognize their faces, maybe you've known them for a very long time. They're there also to support you on the ground, especially with coordination and more Moku scale questions. So we've included their contact information here, but we do encourage you, if you have more general questions, to direct them to us at pnmoku@hawaii.edu, and I'll share that email address again in a minute for another slide. Next, please. Okay. We have a couple of opportunities coming up if you don't always like to be on Zoom and you want a little bit of face-to-face interaction. Across all of the Moku, we will have in-person listening and visioning sessions for people that want to come together, learn more about this opportunity, maybe connect with other organizations or individuals that you might want to collaborate with on things. And I will run through these super quick. So for Kona Kauai, it's coming up real fast, July 23rd. That's next Thursday, 6 p.m. at the Hanapepe Neighborhood Center. For Waianae, it will be on a Saturday, August 8th in the morning at Leeward Community College, the Waianae Moku location. For Molokai, it will be on July 29th in the evening at Kulana Olivi. For Central Maui, it will be on August 4th in the evening at UH Maui College. And then for Kohala, your extra special, you're getting two on both Saturdays, July 25th, coming up pretty fast, and August 8th. And that first one will be at North Kohala Community Resource Center, and the second at Thelma Parker Memorial School and Library. So we will have registration information for all of these on our website. We're in the process of updating the website, so maybe check back in early next week and we should have all those details there. And then we will also have the recording of this webinar in case you're like, oh my goodness, they're going too fast, I can't catch all this stuff. And we will email this stuff out to folks that registered for the webinar as well. Okay, next slide, please. Couple key dates. I would say if you don't remember anything else from this webinar, you should remember these and then our website. So the Moku listening sessions, which I just discussed, are happening over the next month and a half or so in July and August. That statement of interest via Google form is due on August 28th. You will find out by September 21st if you are being encouraged to submit a full proposal. We will have a couple more opportunities for support and connection over the month of October. If you need help developing your budget or thinking through your narrative, or you don't really understand what a data management plan is and you need a little bit more detail on that, we'll have lots of opportunities to connect and developing your actual proposals. And then the full proposal will be due November 6th by 5 p.m. Hawaii time. And then this is also really important. The project start dates, we don't anticipate happening until April of 2027. So it's kind of far out. It takes a little bit of time for the review of the proposals to happen, for all of the mechanisms to move the money to happen. And then also if you're doing kind of shovel in the ground projects, we'll have to do some environmental compliance steps. So if you're thinking about project activities to be funded through this opportunity, you want to really think about things that you're okay with having start in April of 2027, or if you have a lot of environmental compliance, perhaps even a little later. So that's good to game out ahead of time. Next slide, please. Okay, so you probably have a lot of questions, which we have plenty of time to talk more about. But we also have a really great FAQ page. You can see a short URL and a QR code for that FAQ page. And you can check there for lots of great questions to be answered. And that will be a living document that we will update as we get new questions. So your questions that you give us here today, we will add to that FAQ page. And any future questions you might have, we'll add there as well. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our general email address, pnmoku@hawaii.edu. Brad and I will respond to you if you email us at this email address. And if there's other folks that we need to tap in and consult, we can kind of direct you to those people. So this email is kind of your first line for questions. And then pilinamoku.org is our website. You can also get there through the QR code. And that will have all the information we talked about today. As I mentioned, the recording of this webinar and all the information on the upcoming listening sessions in the Moku. So that's a really great place to go to. And I think that concludes everything we wanted to share with you. That was really dense. So I'm sure people have lots of questions. Because of the size of the group today, we have things set so that you're not able to unmute yourself. We're just asking you to ask your questions via chat or Q&A. But also, if you're like, I have a really complicated question, I want to talk it through with the Pili Moku team, please email us. We're super happy to set up time to chat with you on Zoom or on the phone or in person and just like talk through anything that requires a little bit more nuance. But also, please share all your questions here. Okay, I see plenty of things in the chat. I'm going to pass it back over to Brad to kind of MC the Q&A part.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I see some questions in the chat. I also see one in the Q&A window as well. And just a reminder, hopefully folks have found the chat. That button's a little easier to find. The Q&A function, you're also welcome to use. That's in the bottom right of your toolbar, that button that looks like a circle with 3 dots in it. And it says more underneath it. You click on that and it'll pull up the Q&A function. If this is handy if for some reason you want to stay anonymous in your question, you're welcome to use the Q&A function for that too. So let's start with the chat. And some of the questions we've already addressed, but I want to go ahead and state the questions and the answers that are put in there, just in case if there's anybody online that can't see the chat. So the first question we received was, how many proposals are expected to make it past the statement of interest phase per Moku? And the question goes on, so if asked to write a full proposal, we can assume that the project was selected. Maya from our team responded that One proposal in the collaborative pathway and all proposals in the individual pathway will move past the statement of interest phase to the full proposal phase. All full proposals will be evaluated by a panel who will make a recommendation for funding. Okay, looking at what else we have here in the chat first. Next question I see here, and Katie, chime in if I missed one in there, but I think there was just some conversation back and forth and some links shared. Will the listening sessions be recorded, documented in some way for those unable to attend? I can say to begin with that we will gather key questions that come up in these listening sessions also, and add them to the FAQ. As to recording those meetings, I don't anticipate that's going to happen. And I see he's been very involved in planning those, also shaking her head. So we will try to collect key questions that come up again through the FAQ and address those for everybody to see, but we will not be recording or I don't think taking detailed notes in those meetings. Again, you can reach out to us or the coordinator in your Moku also if you want to, talk to them about what happened to the meeting, if you missed it, or if you have particular questions that you were hoping to ask at that meeting. Okay, next question. Do each of the individual collaborative HUI members need to be 501c3 designation if going through the Funding Hub fiscal sponsor? Thank you, Maya, for responding. I'm just going to read this so everybody hears it and knows. Yeah, great question. We recommend getting in touch with the Community Funding Hub in your Moku. So Katie shared the names of each of those funding hubs. So get in touch with them, ask them this question. You can find more information through the Community Funding Hub's webpage on the pilinamoku.org website. So reach out to them on that. Okay, looking for questions. Can one org be part of two collaborative proposals in two different Moku? Can they be lead on both? Interesting question. Katie, you want to take a crack at that? Do we know an answer on that one at this time?
I'll look to the other folks to correct me if I'm wrong. I think the question, can one org be involved in more than one collaborative? Oh, sorry. An org be part of two collaborative proposals in two different Mokus. Can they be lead on both? No, I don't think we've talked about an answer to that question at this time. So I think we'll have to talk about it a little bit and get back to you folks on that.
Okay. Thanks. We'll make special note of that question and respond to it later.
I will note that a very key part of the evaluation criteria is the strength of the organization's relationship to the Moku. So I would encourage you to think about the strength of your relationship to the Moku as you're deciding which Moku to apply for funding in.
Okay. Next question I see in the chat. Any idea how many awards per Moku or expected average award amount? So again, for the collaborative funding pathway, that'll be one award for each of the 5 Moku or Hui Moku of up to $1.2 million within that collaborative pathway. Within the individual projects funding pathway, there's up to $200,000 available per Moku in each of the 5 Moku for that individual funding pathway. And we expect to make 1 to 2 awards. So that'll be up to $200,000 per each of the 5 Moku in that individual pathway. So theoretically, it could be one $200,000 award up to, or split some other way potentially if 2 awards are selected in that particular Moku. Is that clear? Anybody want to add to that in our team? I see Katie adding to the chat on that. So hopefully that covered. Reach back if there was still some questions on that. Can you submit a statement of interest for both collaborative and individual proposal? I think the answer is yes. Okay on that. I don't think we're limiting folks on the number of proposals, statements of interest they may submit. Katie, agreed on that?
It's another question we hadn't discussed yet. So maybe we should talk about it a little bit and get back to folks. But my initial thought is it's okay to submit a statement of interest for both, but it should be for different project activities. So you shouldn't be submitting the same activities under both pathways.
Good distinction. Thank you, Katie. Okay, I see a question about can you share allowable versus non-allowable expenses? And I'm wondering if I might defer to Maya Walton on that. I see you typed in a answer there. Would you mind sharing? And if you need to expand on your answer there, Maya.
Sure. Thanks, Brad. And thanks for this question. My quick notes on this are we're prohibiting spending on things like entertainment, lobbying, and generally for construction of buildings. Construction of things like fences or temporary structures, for example, like structures for aquaculture, are permitted. And then allowable expenses include things like salary, fringe, travel, supplies related to the project that you're proposing. We're going to have some templates, example budget spreadsheets, example budget justifications that are going to go into a resource folder. We're working on that right now. We should have that ready sometime in August. And I think that'll be a nice resource for people to work on budget kinds of things. And if you have a specific expense in mind, if you're not quite sure, please feel free to get in touch with us and we can talk to you more about it.
Thank you, Maya. I see I just closed out the screen share, I think. We can go back to any slides if we need to, but maybe I'll leave it down for the moment. Okay, let me find the questions again. 1 second, please. Okay, there was a comment I see here. It would probably make the most sense to try to coordinate ourselves in the Moku and have just one collaborative proposal set so that we are not competing against each other. Yeah, that is very much aligned with what we're hoping to achieve with this funding opportunity. We really encourage collaboration and partnership within the Moku through this funding opportunity. And your Moku coordinators are available to help with connections and collaboration within the Moku. So please reach out to them. Let us know how we can help make those connections. But I'm hoping you're building on connections, Pili and I, that already exists in your Moku. Okay, next question I see. Can you submit a statement of interest? Oh, okay, we answered this one. Next one. Could listening sessions also be used as a coordinating session for collaborative proposals, or is it mostly similar to this presentation? We hope that the listening sessions will serve as a space for organizations in the Moku to connect and collaborate. We will go over the funding opportunity again for anybody that might have missed this webinar, just because there's a lot to take in. We'll provide some overview of the funding opportunity, but we also do hope there'll be an opportunity for folks to connect further, begin further collaboration, and discuss this opportunity further, ask questions about the funding opportunity. But you may also need to plan. We encourage folks to plan amongst themselves, amongst you all in your Moku, to hold conversations outside of the listening sessions and build further collaboration there. Okay. Next question I see. Since one collaborative project per Moku will be selected for the full proposal, is it safe to assume that that collaborative project will be funded? I wonder if I could take a break from speaking and have Katie address that one.
Sure. So at the statement of interest phase, there may be one collaborative statement of interest submitted, there may be multiple. Once a collaborative project is invited to submit a full proposal, we anticipate that that collaborative team will be funded, and the expert panel will simply help with suggestions for refining and perhaps making improvements to their plan base. So once a collaborative team is invited to the full proposal, we do anticipate that that collaboration, that hui of folks will be receiving funding for activities.
Thanks,
Okay.
Katie.
Um,
Oh, you want to go ahead?
oh no, please.
All right. I see another question here related to 501c3 designation. The question is, if we are not a 501c3 at this time, but would like some help to move forward in that process, can the Community Funding Hub help us in establishing ourselves as a 501c3? Yeah, this is a great question. It'll depend on the individual community funding hub in your Moku. Again, suggest reaching out to them. They are there to be in support of efforts through Pili.moku and more broadly to the community for things like this. But their scope of work, their availability for this varies among some of the funding hubs. So do reach out to those community funding hubs with this request. Okay. Who is the expert review panel? Is it unique to each Moku? We have not assigned the expert review panel. They will be selected for their expertise and the things that relate to this funding opportunity. Is it unique to each Moku? Katie, help me on that one. I can't remember where we landed with that part, and maybe something we need to come back to.
Yeah, I think, we're a little bit limited in what we can share on the expert review panel because we need to keep those folks anonymous. But we can say that they will be selected based on, as Brad mentioned, their expertise related to the specific topics of this funding opportunity and also their knowledge of and connection to these Moku. So I can say that much.
According to the RFP, this funding opportunity, the funding for smaller projects is reimbursement based, which is unrealistic for many nonprofits. Does an advance payment stream exist? And if so, how will that be dispersed? From experience, disbursement from the University of Hawaii and some fiscal sponsors can be excruciatingly slow. What is the time frame for disbursement of funds if in that reimbursement process? So for organizations interested in applying through the individual pathways, you're more than welcome to submit with your community funding hub with the idea that they can help take on some of the administrative and reimbursement burden for that. All awards for both a collaborative and individual pathway will be through a cost reimbursable subaward. But those community funding hubs, again, have been set up with some capacity to help alleviate that reimbursement process. That's one of the challenges we noticed, understood, or trying to address early on with this funding opportunity, and why we worked with the community funding hubs to set them up so they can provide that administrative as well as fiscal support. What those funding hubs offer varies somewhat among the Moku. So again, I would suggest reaching out to them to see what they might be able to support in that regards. Once the subaward is set up at Hawaiʻi Sea Grant through our fiscal office, we will aim to process invoices and provide reimbursements within 10 days or less. So that's our goal. We realize the difficulty if you're working under a reimbursement basis, So we will do everything we can on our end to try to expedite those reimbursement. But again, the funding hubs are there to help provide some capacity in this regards. Is there a suggested number of collaborator organizations for the collaborative project pathway proposal? Katie, you want to take a crack at that one? Or anybody else? Yeah.
I think I answered this in the Q&A section as well.
Oh,
Am I right? So
might
we
have
do not.
missed that. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. If folks are asking their questions via Q&A, I'm trying to type out answers too. So we don't have a specific number of suggested collaborator organizations for the collaborative project pathway. We're really leaving that up to you to decide in terms of what's best for your hui and moku. So there's no minimum or maximum number of collaborating organizations for that pathway.
Okay. Next question I see is large equipment and allowable expense. Large equipment is allowed, but please keep in mind if there is a lease option versus a purchase option, our federal sponsor, again, that's at NOAA, may ask for documentation to show that the selected option is the most cost-effective for the project. If you have questions about this, you have a specific piece of equipment in mind, feel free to reach out to us, our team here. We can talk individually about details on that. Okay, are traditional hale considered construction? Great question. Don't know if we have an answer for that just yet. And I think that may be something we have to come back to, but I'll open it up to the rest of our team to see if they have thoughts on that.
That's a Maya question.
Is it?
Yeah, Brad, let's look into this a little bit more. My answer, yeah, let's look into this a little bit more. I was going to say we want to fund this kind of work. The construction of hale, I think, would be really connected to what Pili na Moku is doing. We can fund people's time to construct a hale. We can even probably fund the materials to construct a hale. So I think we can be creative with how we list things in the budget. And I will look into this a little bit more with our federal sponsor. I think it's a great question.
It is a great question. Thank you. We'll get a more definitive answer on that. Can organizations be umbrella by another organization? So can they be working under, sub-awarded under, or provided funding through another organization? I take that to mean, I think the short answer is yes. I think that's the kind of collaboration we are encouraging through the collaborative funding pathway, beginning with the community funding hubs. But if there needs to be other organizations kind of nested within that, that is possible also. Others in our team want to address that further? Okay. In some cases, one moku flows into another in terms of watershed. Yeah. In our case, we do post-wildfire watershed restoration in Kula Moku and in Pu Lehunui, Ahupua'a, more specifically, which flows into Pu'ali Komohana. Would we qualify? Yeah, this is a really great question. I know that hazards, I know restoration don't necessarily conform to boundaries. What we want to see, I'll start with this and I'll open it up to the rest of our team, is that the benefits, the actions, the work are really focused primarily on the moku or hui moku that we're focused on for this project. But there is room for some overlap and that connectivity here. But the majority of the benefits should be oriented towards those focus moku. Anybody else want to add to that?
I would just say I encourage you if you have like a specific case where you're like, I don't know if my activities are in the Moku enough, or I'm right on the border, or these as Brad mentioned, there's not necessarily we don't think that the maps we have are the definitive end all be all boundaries of these Moku, so there's a little bit of wiggle room. So we encourage you to reach out to us and we can kind of talk one-on-one about how your project activities are designed. But the biggest thing is to convey how you're going to benefit the communities and the AINA of that Moku.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, reach out to us if you want to chat some more individually. Who will be facilitating the listening sessions in each Moku? Would it be the community funding hubs and coordinators? Will they be here? Will they be there to help facilitate on possible next steps? So we're still pulling together the agendas and details for these listening sessions. In most cases, it'll be the Pili na Moku team, some combination of the folks from our team here at UH Manoa and the Moku coordinators that will be facilitating the listening sessions in each Moku. And then your Moku coordinators are available to help facilitate next steps along with our broader Pili na Moku project team. The community funding hubs are also a good resource to contact for potential partnership and coordination if you are interested in collaborating with them through either of the funding pathways. Can we submit a collaborative project under the individual project pathway with one organization as the lead and contract other partners? It is okay to submit a statement of interest for both the collaborative and individual pathway as long as the proposed work does not overlap. So don't think we want to see you proposing the same work through both pathways. Yeah, if you have separate projects, you may consider submitting them through the two pathways. But again, we're emphasizing collaboration. So I suggest you consider that collaborative pathway first, and that individual pathway is kind of the additional pathway that's available if they just, for some reason, that collaborative approach is not going to work for your organization. Can you clarify the evaluation criteria? Sorry, can you clarify if the evaluation criteria was for evaluating the statements of interest or full proposals or both? I'll start on this one. I welcome Katie or others to chime in on this. For the collaborative pathway evaluation criteria, we will use for the collaborative pathway, we will use the evaluation criteria for evaluating the statements of interest. For the individual pathways, the evaluation criteria will not be applied until the full proposal stage. So that's an important distinction. All individual statements of interest that meet the evaluation criteria will be able to submit a full proposal through individual pathways. So let me run through that one more time and help me here if anybody wants to from our team also. So for the collaborative projects funding pathway, we will use both the evaluation criteria and the eligibility criteria in the statement of interest phase. For the individual pathways, we will only apply the eligibility criteria in the statement of interest phase. We will then apply the full evaluation criteria to the individual proposals at that proposal stage. Hope that is clear. That's a complicated aspect of this funding opportunity. I'll pause there, see if anybody else needs to clarify from our team or add to that. Okay. Question, this is a good one. I assume collaborative projects are meant for a larger vision of the Moku versus individual projects all submitted under one proposal. Is that a correct assumption? Yeah, so with the collaborative proposal funding pathway, we're really seeking projects that are able to maximize collective benefit to the Moku. Not necessarily saying you got to cover the entire geographic scale of the Moku, but that collective benefit is an important aspect. And yeah, they should have generally a larger vision geographically, community-wise, than the individual projects pathway proposals. All right. What if they are providing restoration materials such as native and food plants? Yes, I believe revegetation, purchasing of plants is eligible for funding under this funding opportunity. Katie, Maya, did I get that right?
Yeah, Dustin, do you mind expanding on your question a little bit? Who is the they? And yeah, can you expand on your question a little bit?
I have to do that through the chat, and I can't see that at the moment. So yeah.
Oh, that's right. Dustin.
Could enable Dustin to chime in here once.
Oh, let's do that.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Well, aloha, my
Oh, there he is.
I was
Aloha,
I heard KCA was asking about if they could apply because they're not in the Moku, but they do projects Mauka of Pulehunui that borders Pualikomohana. So just wondering if they would be able to provide plant material, native plants, and food products for restoration projects in our Moku.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think that would be fine if the plants are going towards a restoration site within the Moku. Those plant materials can be purchased outside of the Moku. Your question makes sense to me now. Great question.
Okay, thanks, Dustin. Next question I see, does the project budget need to include the administrative costs of the hub for individual grants, for the individual pathway? I believe that's asking about. That's a good question. So yeah, if some of the individual projects are run through, again, that's projects that are run through the individual projects funding pathway. If those are run through the funding hub, how are any administrative costs from the funding hub addressed? Should that be included in a project budget? That's a good question. I'm not sure we have an answer on that. Do we need some discussion from our team on that? Maya, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. Admin costs are an allowable cost in the collaborative pathway. I don't think that they will apply to the individual pathway, but if you have a specific example you want to discuss with us, we're happy to think about that. But admin costs can be included in the collaborative pathway budget spreadsheet. Great question. Brad, I'm noticing we're at 12:58.
Yeah, thanks, Maya.
And I wanted to let the group know that all of the questions we have received through the Zoom chat and the Zoom Q&A function, we are going to work on providing a written response to all these and adding them to our living FAQ doc. A bunch Brad and Katie have answered in real time, which is wonderful. But if folks want to refer back to the written response, we will work on updating the FAQ doc in the next week.
Yeah, as mentioned, this is a recorded webinar, so we'll make this available on our website, and we have all these in-person sessions coming up that you can attend as well. And I can stick around a while after 1 p.m. So if you're like, you missed my question and it's buried several leagues back in the chat, feel free to hang out a little past the 1 o'clock mark, and we can chat more if anybody wants to stick around.
I will stay on as well. But otherwise, mahalo nui, everybody, for the broad interest, everybody's interest in this funding opportunity. Really excited to see the number of folks we had log into this, and we're here for further questions. Again, we'll be, as Maya said, we'll be sharing out the answers to these questions in the FAQ document. And we're here also for individual conversations if you want to talk about concerns or questions that you have related to the funding opportunity. We're here. All right. Mahalo, everybody.